Hi, welcome to Cracks in the Cement podcast. My name is Ro, and I'm your host. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I've been really wanting to talk about for a while, so I'm feeling kind of energized to be getting it out there. I want to talk about some things I've been kind of thinking about as far as how whiteness might be kind of getting mixed in with symptoms of ADHD. And I'm using the term ADHD as a convenience. The for it to be a diagnosis and to be deemed a disorder kind of rubs me the wrong way. But the reality is there are some symptoms that I know I've dealt with in my life that have been challenging to, or have been confusing and challenging as I've tried to fit into the mainstream culture. And so I've been kind of on this path, as a lot of folks have, of a lot of people in my reality stepping into realization of having symptoms of ADHD and how it can be useful and helpful. So I just want to talk about some of the ways it shows up in my life and ways in which I it seems like we need to be, as white people, really aware and accountable of how some whiteness might kind of come up. And what I'm thinking about when I think of whiteness is just sort of the social conditioning, the propaganda that we've all been raised in. If you were raised in mainstream American culture, US culture, that basically white superiority, the sense of entitlement, centering of oneself, and less resilience as far as like not getting our way. So those are some of the symptoms of whiteness I see. And then I'm thinking about like how do those kind of get merged in with what gets the diagnosis of ADHD. And like I said, or maybe I didn't say this, I am, in case I didn't say it, I'm going to talk about this with myself so that I'm not, I don't want to apply this to everybody. And I'm just, yes, I'm just going to use myself as sort of like a case study in what I've been kind of reflecting on. So let's see, I took some notes because I want to make sure that I'm focused here, speaking of ADHD and talking too much. That's another thing that I tend to do. So first of all, I just want to say that I know there can be so much relief in realizing one has ADHD. For me, it was such a relief. I always felt kind of confused. I always felt kind of like a fuck up in my family. It's and I have a lot of social anxiety around I'm going to say something stupid, or I won't be able to follow through on certain things. Like I'm going to screw something up. I'm going to break something. I'm going to get something dirty. Kind of this feeling of floating, emotional dysregulation. Like there are all these things that have been challenging in my life that having that label or just knowing there are these symptoms that I have that relate to that, it kind of helps me separate from myself a little bit, just like I do with whiteness. Like, oh, this is this thing, the way my brain is perceiving the world. And so it kind of gives me a little bit of breathing space to bring in tools or to be able to verbalize what's going on for me, to just be more mindful of how I am showing up in relationship with other beings. So for me, it was a great relief, and it's helped me be more authentic, to be able to not work so hard to try to seem normal. And also I want to acknowledge that as a white person, that there's less stigma as far as having a diagnosis, so also naming that's one thing that I've been thinking about with white people, is that when we get diagnosed, and there can be this big freedom in unmasking and being our true selves, and that sometimes that can mean not really being aware of, or kind of letting our filters kind of loosen as far as being cautious and continue to be mindful of how we are impacting others as far as how much space we're taking up. So, so the first thing I had was that kind of like unmasking loosens our filters. And we just still have to kind of have this like responsibility as far as also being a white person. So I kind of already alluded to this, but I want to look at my list to make sure I didn't miss anything. So some of the symptoms that have caused me trouble in my life that I worry can get turned up because I am white is the need to be right. I can kind of have this sort of argumentative hyperfixation intensity when I think I'm right on something. Um, there's yeah, that relates to rejection sensitivity as well, which is another symptom that I really relate to, being easily uh, just kind of the sensitivity to what do people think of me, feeling kind of attacked, the fear of being rejected, kind of putting me on edge when there is like conflict. I have the need to share my thoughts and opinions a lot, hence this podcast. So, I mean, these things have shadow sides and they also can sometimes have some benefits, right? It's just contextual. Another one is emotional dysregulation. I can have like neuro overwhelm. I can have sort of meltdowns or tantrums if I feel like I'm not being understood, or like specifically with my partner, if I'm feeling, before I realized that to notice when I'm drained, like my battery is low, I would still try to push myself, and then I would end up just having these kind of like emotional meltdowns. Also, I have extreme feelings of like and dislike or discomfort. Like suddenly I'm like way too hot, and suddenly I'm way too cold. And my partner has noticed that for a long time, like how I just cross this line and just suddenly I have this, or that's too loud, or that's too bright. And so that sensitivity is real, like it's a real experience. And I just have to be aware of, am I centering myself too much? Am I not showing up with enough resiliency? Am I not taking enough responsibility for myself? Like, am I standing right near a speaker? Well, am I not wearing earplugs? Or are there like protective eyewear I can bring, or bring a baseball cap and block the lights from my eyes? So kind of like being careful to not expect, I want to make sure I'm not expecting the whole room to be adjusted for my sensitivity. Like, where am I making sure that I'm coming in with being responsible? Yeah, and I also tend to be really impatient with waiting for people to talk. So I have a tendency to interrupt others, or I just have to work really hard not to interrupt others. But that's something I really want to be careful that I'm not like, well, I just have ADHD, so I'm just going to interrupt people and I'm just going to overtalk. And that's just me. I'm just, neurodivergent and quirky, which is my last name, Quirk. But so just thinking about like centering myself, feeling that sense of entitlement, and feeling that little bit, like that just little bit of superiority that can creep up, that conditioning, that programming, the loosening of filters as I unmask, just thinking about, I honestly, in this reflection, I was like, whoa, some of the symptoms of ADHD kind of align nicely with some of the symptoms of whiteness, that I was like, whoa, besides the fact that there's so much racism in the medical industry, and there's more stigma if you're a person of color, a melanated person of color being diagnosed, I was like, so on top of those, I thought, I wonder if more white people are diagnosed with ADHD because symptoms of whiteness can actually kind of align nicely with ADHD, some of them. So, and I'm not discounting the symptoms of ADHD. I'm just wondering if whiteness can kind of elevate some of those symptoms to make it show up more. And I want to be so careful with this saying things, especially because another thing is that white people, because of whiteness, can also be very triggered by these kinds of conversations, as far as like anything that has caused oppression or marginalization. If a person is also white, if any of those marginalizations or any of those challenges get challenged, there can be real trigger. So, and I'm willing to lean into that, and I'm totally open and to having those conversations. And if I did say anything that wasn't cool, I'm also totally into taking responsibility for that. So, I really, the thing that feels the best to me, because I don't know what it's like to be other people, is just to name that I very much legitimately have so many, probably most of the symptoms on the ADHD list. And I can see how my whiteness can very easily weave in with those things. And I want to be very, very careful that that diagnosis doesn't make me relax too much as far as my mindfulness and responsibility and accountability and my care for the community and how I impact folks of color. So, um, yeah, I hope that that was clear and that I didn't meander too much. And and I hope that if you are a white person who relates to or has been diagnosed with ADHD, that this is helpful and resonates with you. And I hope you all are doing well. And yeah, it is like, whew, it is a really intense time, you know, like never ever. I know that it's been intense times ever since I think colonization has happened. And then also before that, you know, it's like Earth and the human experience is such an intense experience for so many people. And it's just never been so global. It's never been so at the same time. It's never also had climate change and all these new things to think about and deal with, you know, as far as um, AI. And it's just like all of these compounding realities. And so, with that, I just really hope that you all are finding ways to find groundedness, connection with yourself, connection with others, and something that you're anchoring into that helps you weather all of these storms that we are in and we're going to keep being in, you know, for probably the next several years. So, yeah, just sending you all love and lots of care, and thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye.